All right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Michelle Arkridge Valentine, and I am the engagement consultant with NBS. And we are supporting Groveland Community Service District with public outreach on this really important water and sewer rate study. Tonight's meeting is designed to walk you through what's being proposed, why it's being considered, and how it really can affect you. We know these topics are sometimes complicated, so our goal is to really break things down in a really straightforward, transparent way that allows you to have some space for questions. We'll start with brief presentation covering the background, current challenges, and proposed rate adjustments. Pete Campa, the general manager, and Jeremy Tamargo, our engineer on the project, will walk us through key details. Then we'll open up the floor for questions. You can type your questions in your chat throughout the presentation as well, and we'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A at the end. A few quick reminders before we dive in. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on civicmic.com/Groveland afterwards. If you are just tuning in or have neighbors who couldn't make it tonight, please help spread the word about the resources available online. And finally, we want to hear from you, not just tonight, but throughout the process. This is about your water, your sewer system, and your community. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Pete to get us started and give us some background on the study.
Thank you. I really want to go around real quick and just introduce the GCSD team here, because we've all had a hand in this in many different ways. But I'll start with myself. I'm Pete Campa. I'm the general manager for the Groveland Community Services District. I came on initially as a consultant in 2018 to help the district get on its feet and move forward with a number of things in management transition. And I've been here since that time, and had a lot of exciting projects. And I'll start with Jen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Donabedian. I'm the Administrative Services Manager with Groveland Community Services District. I've been with the district for 14 years. I'm also a resident of Pine Mountain Lake. Family moved here in 1999, and I've been in and out of the community since then. So that's me.
Rachel Perlman with the district here. I'm the executive assistant and board secretary. I've been a resident of Groveland for 20 plus years, but unfortunately moved to Sonora just in the last 3 years. And I've been working here at the district for almost 8 years.
I'm Megan Atkins. I'm an administrative services technician and the utility billing clerk. I've been with GCSD for almost 6 years. I also live in Pine Mountain Lake, and I moved here in 2017. And I've lived in Groveland since 2020.
Hi, I'm Michelle Ronning. I am the finance officer. I've been working with GCSD for about 1.5 years now, and I've been living in Pine Mountain Lake since 2006.
So some longtime residents and people that are invested in the community. So I started out with 15 minutes. I now have about 12 minutes. I really am gonna jump through this because it's really all about the numbers and everything else, but it's really important to understand the background behind the thought process that go into this, and the effort and why we do this. GCSD was formed in 1953 and by a vote of the population in Groveland, and the reason for that was to build a water and sewer system. The community was growing, and it didn't have an adequate supply of water, and the sewage was being discharged into the creek, and that was not a good thing to have happen. And so the district was formed to build the systems to move the district forward, or move the community forward. I'm having a hard time with my technology here. So the district is charged with public and environmental health and safety. We have, I'll talk a little bit about some of the permits and other things that drive our daily life. it's really important to understand that we don't have a lot of discretion in how we operate our business. I wish we did. It would certainly make it much easier, but we live in a very regulatory driven environment. And, also, we're providing a public service and we take that very seriously. We really want to make sure that the water quality, the water that we're delivering is safe, it's reliable, and that we're protecting the health and safety of the community with our wastewater treatment as well. We also provide infrastructure to support economic development. If we don't think about things like fire flow, if we don't think about water supply for fire sprinklers or for homes in the future, then we can't support economic development. So we have to plan for that. And in many cases, we're planning 50 years in the future. So the regulatory nature of the district services, and I guarantee, I know this is boring, so I'm going to jump through it as quickly as I can. We have, there are things that we have authority to address when it comes to the cost of providing service, and there's things that we have to comply with no matter what it costs. And the compliance is mandatory under permits from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. That's a state agency. They issue our wastewater permits. State Water Resources Control Board has our water supply permits. We have the Division of Dam Safety for our reservoirs that we have on site. So we have another layer of state government that regulates our operations. And then we have the state laws and other regulations under the government code, the public contract code, the water code, the health and safety code. When people ask, well, who controls you guys? Who do you answer to? It's the state laws that are our governing body in reality. We have a board of directors, but we have to comply with state laws and these permits that we have to deliver water and wastewater. Some of the things that we have the authority to be able to control is the number of employees and pay and benefits. If we pay employees less, we don't pay as much money out. If we don't have the number of employees, then we obviously save money. We've seen in the past that by reducing employees, we also reduce the maintenance on the system. We jeopardize compliance with the permits, and we have a lot of we have things that break down earlier than they should if we're not employing the right people. And then we also have had periods of time in the past where we've had extreme amounts of employee turnover where we couldn't get qualified certified people to be able to operate the systems. It used to be Groveland was an inexpensive place to live. And now there's no inexpensive place to live in the state of California. And it's hard for us to attract employees unless we're paying competitive wages and offering competitive benefits in our labor market. But we do have the ability to be able to make those types of adjustments. Level of customer service. Some offices don't open as many days a week to save money. That's something that can occur here, but that hasn't been very well received if people can't make contact with the office, or we're not able to perform the other administrative functions. System efficiency. Maintenance versus replacement. Replacement on a schedule for this major equipment, the major infrastructure, is the most predictable way for us to do our business. So we know a pump is going to last 10 years. We prepare to replace that pump at 10 years. You're never going to have that pump break down, so long as you maintain it along the way. But if we decide we're going to maintain it for 20 years instead of the 10-year life, then you have a period of time where you have some risk that it's just going to fail, just like an old vehicle or anything else. And that can reduce your reliability of your system. And the same with fixed versus when it's broken versus planned. If we replace things, if we plan the replacement of things, we can absolutely maintain the reliability of water service. And unfortunately, when you start to really try to save a lot of money, on your system maintenance. You will have breakdowns when you don't expect them, which results in water supply outages or wastewater treatment problems that are difficult to get control of. Should bounce through this. One of the other things that influence our costs that we haven't talked about yet is land use planning. We don't control whether an area of the community develops and where development occurs, how dense it is, and what its impacts are on services. For example, there might be a residential subdivision that is proposed outside the district boundaries, but they will access our water system when it comes time for construction of those lots. They'll access our water system when it comes time to fight a fire on those properties. So they'll take your fire hydrant and they'll use it to fill the fire truck and then drive outside to the area that is not in the district or doesn't connect to the system. So the county, the relationship with the county and land use planning affects the cost. And again, state permits, the state doesn't say, oh, you're a small community, we'll give you a chance to just, we won't force you to comply with the permit when it comes to wastewater treatment, just because you're small and you're maybe a disadvantaged community. They say you comply no matter what, and if you don't, we're going to fine you, and then we're going to give you an order to improve your system so we don't have to deal with you again. So those are some of the things that we deal with. We have engineers that work with us that help us through all of this. So it really is important to understand what drives our cost. We have more pumps and miles of pipe per 100 customers than most urban systems. If you think about going down to the valley, especially when you're in the Bay Area, you might have thousands of people in a few square blocks. In GCSD, you might have 2 homes in a few square blocks. So the cost of the infrastructure is the same, but in an urban area, you have more people to pay for it. And that especially goes for administrative cost and all of that. More people contributing to the infrastructure. We have a small customer base. We have limited growth. Those are things that areas, for example, Elk Grove. Costs are pretty cheap in Elk Grove in many cases because they've had such growth that the incremental increase in the cost of doing business is covered more so by the number of customers that come in. We don't have to have multiple general managers if we were serving twice the customer base. So that's one disadvantage that we have, is we have a very small customer base to spread all the cost. We have many miles of infrastructure in the ground, including asbestos cement water mains and sewer mains. And when you think asbestos, don't be freaked out that means that they're some kind of water quality contamination or anything else. That's just they were built in the 1960s. It was a common type of pipe. And as long as it's maintained correctly and the water quality is good, you don't have that many problems. But they're at their useful life. And we have millions of dollars of those under the ground that need to be replaced. We have service lines, valves, fire hydrants, all of which are over 50 years old. And when you plan infrastructure replacement, you typically look at 50 years as the time that you're starting a replacement cycle. One big thing that we get a lot of phone calls about is why people will say, I have a home in San Jose. Why are my rates in Groveland so much more? Well, first off, the home values obviously in the Bay Area are much more, and we have a good percentage of people that have a second home here, and so the home values are much more. So the property taxes are much more, and the property taxes actually go in to subsidize the water and sewer systems. So they come into the city or the district down there and reduce the bills by $15 or $20 a month because of property taxes. In Groveland, we don't have any property tax to allocate to that water and wastewater enterprise. All of our property taxes that we do receive goes to fire and parks. So that's something that is important to understand, because that also adds to that small customer base issue. Compromising on water quality is not an option. We certainly can't say, oh, we're just gonna turn the filters on and not use the ultraviolet because it's too expensive, or things like that. We have certified operators that are certified by the state of California. They have to treat the water to a certain standard, and there is absolutely no option that they're gonna not do that. So we have to do everything to meet those standards and protect health and safety. Service reliability, and compromising that is not an option, and compromising on system maintenance is not an option either. We really need to make sure that the water, we'd hate to have a situation where our water goes out for Memorial Day weekend in Groveland, and it doesn't turn on until Monday afternoon because we can't get it fixed because we don't have the people. So we want to make sure that we plan, we know how many people it's going to take. We know what we have to have in place to be able to make sure that that we're prepared to keep the system up and running. Inflation over the past 3 years alone has increased our cost by about 20 to 25%. Everybody's seen it, and we're all talking about it, from our insurance, our electricity, our internet, our everything our fuel, all of that has increased significantly. Some good news is that the last time we went through water and sewer rate increases, we were in a tough financial condition at that point, but what it did was it increased our cash flow and allowed us to be able to leverage a lot of money, about 25 million over the last 7 years. And that's specifically for the water and wastewater systems. We have completed or are working on $8.6 million in sewer collection system rehabilitation, in replacement of our headworks, which is a big filter that filters out the initial solids and wastewater, sludge processing and sludge drying improvements, and generator replacements. So 8.6 million in funding, 5.2 of those in grants. And without the past rate increases that we have, we wouldn't have the cash flow to do the engineering and get the projects ready to go, and to be able to pay contractors, because the state takes, in many cases, 6 to 8 weeks to reimburse us. 13.2 million in water is the amount of funding we've received in the last 7 years for drought rehabilitate or drought supply reliability. We built a new water tank, or we're building it, it's almost done. A new pipeline that goes from that tank to the community of Big Oak Flat. A number of fire hydrants added to that line. We've got a water treatment plant relocation on our property, which is going to save money and make for more efficient operations. Rehabilitation of clear wells. These are really boring things. Sorry. A clear well is a big water tank. But it was a $4 million project that we would have had to cover with rates, but because we were aggressive at finding grants, we were able to cover that cost. And also generator replacements, because we have generators, emergency backup power generators at each of our pump locations, because of the fact that PG&E power goes out a lot, and we have to be able to pump the sewage and to pressurize the water. One thing that's caused us some grief that comes into our consideration when we're doing financial analysis is that the state recently conducted an income survey, because most of the grant money that comes out to water and sewer systems is based on whether you're income eligible, whether you are a disadvantaged community with lower income getting more grant money. And for our history, the GCSD system has been considered a disadvantaged community. It accessed us a lot of grant money. The state, when they saw the fact that we were seeing 38% home value increases, came in and did an income survey. And the only people that seemed to respond were those within the gates of Pine Mountain Lake. And not that that really matters all that much, except that our median household income came back, went up from mid 50s, 55,000 up into 89,000 as a median household income, which took us out of the grant qualification. And because we have 48% transient occupants, meaning either vacation homes or second homeowners, it puts us on the verge of not receiving state subsidized funds. We have to be really careful about that. When you start getting over 50%, they won't even loan you money. So I mean, those are considerations. It's not terrible news because we still have had other grants come in. And we're still pursuing those, we have our funding sources for our water and sewer system are rates and grants and, again, state and federal grants, and there are very few subsidies at all. There were some during COVID to relieve people of their bills, but those are gone now. And I'm just about done here. We did an exhaustive job of estimating our budget costs. And we did that by looking at what our costs have been in the past, what we see in the future, and looking at the level of inflation. And we built into our projections that Jeremy can address that more. They built in, making sure that once we adjust rates, that we've considered any inflation to make sure that we don't get behind. If we say we're going to build something, we got to have money to be able to do it. We are looking to, we need to increase system maintenance from where we are today. We want to make sure that the system is reliable, that everything is safe, that it operates when you turn it on. And we know that our capital improvement plan that we have, we're only funding a percentage of it, which means that we're making stuff last longer. So we know we have to increase our maintenance effort. We have a focus on long-term sustainability. So what we did is we looked at the fact that we were all the reserves that we were building up were being diminished because our operating cost was exceeding the amount of revenue that has been coming in over the last few years. So we engaged an independent municipal finance firm, which is NBS, and they developed a cost of service study and a model so that we can look at the future and make sure that we can analyze different funding and financing options to accomplish what we need to accomplish. So the board has heard this presentation and information about the resulting rates a couple of times so far, starting in March and then in April as well. And so we contracted with NBS to do the rate model, and they did a fantastic job of really understanding everything and making sure that we projected out accurately into the future. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeremy. I have no idea how long that was. That was the fastest I've ever talked in my entire life, and hopefully it was still understandable.
You, Pete. I'm going to share my screen here. Michelle, are you able to see that on your end?
Yes, I definitely am, Jeremy. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Mike. I'm seeing you shaking your head yes as well, so I appreciate that. So good evening, everyone. As Pete said, my name is Jeremy Tamargo. I'm with the consulting firm NBS, and I'm a member of our utility rate group. So I am going to provide a brief overview of the water and sewer rate study process. So first, I'm going to talk big picture, give an overview of what a rate study is, specifically what that means to conduct a rate study in the state of California. And then I will present a brief overview specific to both the water and the sewer utilities for GCSD. So in terms of the rate study purpose and methodology, so it is required to comply with Prop 218, which is the state law here in California which governs setting rates. Typically, a district or an agency will prepare that study every 5 years. And the purpose of the rate study is to demonstrate the fairness and the equity of the customer rates for the customers being served. In terms of the general rate study methodology, there are three components in putting together our rate study. The first is what's known as developing the financial plan, which is really understanding your revenue requirements. So that is a comparison of the current sources of funds compared to the uses of funds. The second piece is what we call a cost of service analysis, where we're taking those revenue requirements and proportionally allocating it to the customer classes that are being served. And the third is what is known as the rate design analysis, which is how we structure the rates. So there are fixed charges, so charges that are consistent on a monthly basis. And then there are what's known as variable charges, which vary based on your consumption of, say, the water that you're consuming. And so the rate design consider which structure is best to meet the agency's need. I try not to use too many complicated terms in my presentations, but one technical term we use is what's known as a net revenue requirement, which is simply how much of the costs need to be recovered from the customer rates. So the math here, you include the operation and maintenance costs that Pete was talking about. You add any debt service requirements, any loans, both existing or proposed over the course of the 5 years. You add your capital costs, so those capital improvement projects that are either needed for rehab or upgrades to the system. If you have any non-rate revenues, such as income from licenses, fines, application fees, that can be subtracted out to get to what's known as that net revenue requirement number. Similar to your household, you also want to have adequate funding levels for reserves, so cash on hand in case of emergency or unexpected events for the utility. In developing the financial plan for a utility, I like to use a buckets analogy. So as the revenue comes into the agency, the first bucket that needs to be filled up is the operation and maintenance bucket. So that's the cost of running and maintaining the service or the infrastructure on a day-to-day basis. So once that bucket is funded, the next bucket is known as the capital reserves bucket. And so this is used for those future significant investments or infrastructure upgrades identified by Pete and his staff that are necessary, both for rehab as well as upgrades to the utility. And then the third bucket, which is really the goal for every agency to get to, is to be able to fill up those first two buckets and then be also able to allocate funds on a pay-as-you-go basis. So an annual allotment for the district to be able to pay as they go annually into those capital infrastructure projects. And so developing a financial plan that will get the district to be able to fund these three buckets is the ultimate goal of the rate study. Once we've developed the financial plan, as I mentioned, the second piece is what's known as the cost of service analysis. And so we're allocating costs based to serve each type of customer. So for your water costs, you have system capacity costs, which is based on the infrastructure, the size of the infrastructure needed to serve the community. You have commodity costs, which is based on how much water is actually consumed. And then you also have customer costs, which is based on the number of accounts being served. Once we allocate those costs, then we're assigning that to the customer classes based on their proportional share of the criteria. Similar but a little different on the sewer side. You have flow related costs, so that's the amount of effluent or wastewater that is generated. You have your effluent strength related costs, so basically how strong the wastewater is in terms of the need to treat it, as well as your customer costs for billing, other admin type of costs. And so once we have those costs allocated, we group customers into what we call customer classes. So for instance, residential customers are one customer class with similar characteristics. So the Prop 218 process, we focus on those customer classes and determining the rates for the customer classes themselves. So in terms of the rate design objectives, Pete alluded to it. The rates here for each of the utilities need to be proportional to the cost of service. So it is directly tied to the cost, the amount of revenue needed to serve each of those customer classes. Um, Various court cases have further emphasized that the rates need to demonstrate that cost basis, both in terms of any water rates, in terms of developing tiers, but those basic principles apply to all of our rates. The rates developed as part of the survey or the study need to be equitable and non-discriminating against any different customer classes. From both the customer as well as the district side, ease of administration and understanding is paramount, as well as providing that revenue stability for the district itself to be able to operate and execute needed capital improvement projects. So that was the high level overview of rate study in general. So now I will touch upon the specific details of both starting with the water side and then moving over to the sewer side. So again, just emphasizing what Pete talked about. So the purpose of this water rate study, first and foremost, to make sure those water rates cover the operating and maintenance costs for the district as they exist, but also as are projected over the 5-year period. And so we work closely with Pete and his staff to understand the district's budgets and their O&M needs. Ensuring sufficient funding for essential capital improvement projects, so understanding the needs that have been identified by the district on both the water and later on the sewer side in terms of what they need for rehab as well as new capital infrastructure. Maintaining those appropriate reserve funds as well as complying with all the legal requirements here in the state of California under what's known as Prop 218. So the next slide is the overview of the financial plan. So in terms of the district's budget, I'll direct you to the first gray row. What we identified is that is an existing deficiency in terms of the uses of the water funds exceeding the current sources of water funds. So as Pete alluded to, the cost inflation has been the primary driver in terms of those costs increasing for the district beyond keeping pace with the existing rate revenue under the prevailing rates. And so that deficit, as you see, will only increase without rate adjustments over the 5-year period. And so what is needed and what is determined by the rate study are those additional revenue needed from the rate increases in order to address those deficiencies. And so the projected annual rate increases are shown there in the yellow. So for the first year, it's a 35% maximum adjustment, followed by 26 in 26-27, and then a maximum of 10% for the years 3 through 5. And so I'll get into what went into the discussion with both district staff and the board. So We had many conversations with district staff over the course of this study, as well as 2 workshops with the board. So our water model analysis investigated a number of scenarios based on the CIP, as well as utilizing new debt funding in order to mitigate these impacts on ratepayers. So our financial plan is showing the following recommendations that have been brought forth by the board as well as staff, which is utilization of a new revenue bond of 7.7 million in order to fund 20% of the district identified CIP over the 5-year rate implementation period. So again, the current financial plan is only funding 20% of the district CIP over the next 5 years. There's 80% that will need to be deferred out into later years just based on this proposed funding strategy. We also received board direction regarding smoothing those rate adjustments. So we have smoothed out, based on the feedback, those rate adjustments to the extent practicable. But these adjustments are still absolutely critical in order to address that existing budget deficit, as well as to cover those debt service requirements, both the existing debt service as well as that projected new debt service requirements. And then for years 3 through 5, those maximum adjustments are necessary to keep pace with inflation, as well as to begin to build those reserve levels above the absolute minimums identified for the utility. Because again, there is 80% of the CIP that's been identified that will not be funded based on this financial plan. So what this looks like graphically, and so the black line is showing the revenues under the existing rates for the district. So as you could see, they are currently below the revenue requirements and would remain so throughout the course of the 5 years if they were not adjusted. So the blue line is the revenues under those increased rates. And so you could see in the first year, it is still not even meeting the revenue requirements, but is slowly creeping up and above those revenue requirements. And you could see by the end of that 5-year period, it is greater than the revenue requirements. And the reason for that is because currently, for the water side, the reserve targets are well below the absolute recommended minimum targets for the utility. And so it is only by year 4 of the study where the reserves are getting close to meeting that minimum threshold. And then by year 5, it is exceeding for the first time the minimum target balance. And part of this strategy is to start to build that reserve in order to begin to tackle the other 80% of the CIP that is identified by the district as necessary, but will not be implemented over the 5-year period. As part of the interaction and feedback from the district board, the monthly fixed service charges, so the fixed rates in terms of the meter charges, there was a shift in terms of how much revenue is collected from the fixed charges. So this proposed rate structure will be collecting 55% of the projected revenue off of the fixed charges and 45% of revenue from the volumetric. And that direction staff and NBS received from the board was to try to allow ratepayers to have more cost control over their bills. And so a greater percentage of that revenue collected is based on the variable charges of how much water is being consumed. So on the monthly fixed charge, if you are 3/4 inch or less, that is about $6 in terms of the increase in the first year in that adjustment. And then depending on how much water is consumed, that is really where the biggest adjustments will be seen for the higher water users. We also looked at, as part of the study, a regional rate comparison. So the first green bar on the left is where GCSD is currently compared to the regional neighbors. And so the second bar, green bar, as you move over to the right, is where these proposed rates would look like for an average water consumption of the 3,300 gallons. So putting it right in between TUD and Angels Camp in terms of the average water bill in the region. On the sewer rate side, similar process in terms of understanding the objectives and planning for the 5-year horizon. So first and foremost, covering those operating and maintenance costs, ensuring that there is sufficient funding for the essential capital improvement projects, maintaining those appropriate reserve funds, and then complying with the legal requirements of Prop 218. So, the financial plan summary for the sewer utility, similar situation. That first gray row is showing that deficiency in terms of funds on the sewer side currently in the existing budget and would only be magnified over the 5-year period if there were not revenue adjustments. And so the financial plan identifies the needed adjustments in rate revenue from the sewer rates. So the first year is 30%, then 15, and then years 3 through 5, 10%. Similar on the sewer side, gathering the feedback from district staff in terms of prioritizing the absolutely necessary CIP, as well as utilizing debt funding options in order to soften those rate impacts and rate adjustments on the customers. So the following recommendation of utilizing a new revenue bond of 3.7 million to fund 50% of the CIP that was identified by the district staff over the 5-year period. Similar to on the water side, board directed us to smooth those rate increases as much as possible in terms of the first 2 years. So what you see reflected here are those absolutely necessary in order to address the existing budget deficit as well as to cover that debt service requirement. And then years 3 through 5 again are needed to keep pace with projected inflation as well as begin to build those reserve levels above the recommended minimums in order to begin to tackle the other 50% of the identified capital projects that will not be funded over the 5-year period. So similarly, this is the graphical picture of the financial plan. So the black line shows that the existing revenues are under the existing rates are insufficient to meet those revenue requirements. So the blue line is showing that adjustment to be ordered in order to keep pace with those revenue requirements. On the sewer side, the existing reserve levels are a bit healthier than what was on the water side. And so this is really a plan to maintain those levels in terms of the reserves, just about at 2 million in order to be able to start tackling both the other 50% of the CIP, as well as having those funds on hand if needed to deal with unexpected events or emergencies on the utility side. As part of discussions with staff as well as the board considered both keeping the existing structure for the sewer rate charges or option 2, which was moving to 100% fixed charges. So what we heard from the board was that the monthly volume usage charges could be confusing, as well as difficult to administer on the district side of things. The other consideration was a fixed charge structure could allow the district to implement the sewer rate charges on the tax roll rather than as a monthly bill. And so for these reasons, the board selected moving to an 100% fixed service charge on the sewer side, which is common throughout the state in terms of a sewer rate option. So what you see reflected there is option 2, which was the board selected option. We also put together the monthly sewer bill comparison with neighboring communities. And so as you could see, GCSD there, how it currently compares with the neighboring communities currently, and then where the rate will go compared to neighboring communities if approved by the board. My final slide here, coming in for a landing, just an overview of the legal process in terms of Prop 218 in the state. So our first step, the board provided direction on the proposed rate adjustments. That was on April 8th, so last week. The board has directed staff to send out what are known as the Prop 218 notices. And so those notices will go to all water and sewer customers in the district. You are provided with a 45-day notice in terms of the timeline in order to be able to review the proposed study, as well as if you would like to protest the rates, submit a protest. The board will then hold a public hearing to consider and approve the new rates. That is scheduled for June 18th of 2025. Assuming no successful Prop 218 challenge, so that would be if a challenge would be 50% plus one in terms of the protest ballots received. So if that does not occur, then the board at their discretion has the ability to adopt the new rates, which would be effective on July 1. So that is the end of my presentation. I appreciate the time, and I will turn it back over to Michelle.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jeremy. So I am going to keep it short because I do know that there was a lot of information. I do want you all to know that you can go to civicmike.com/Groveland, and I'm going to have John post it in the comments as well. And I want you to know that this presentation, the slides will all be on there. So if you were taking notes and you wanted to double check on them, please feel free. Or if after this Q&A session that we're about to have, if you think of something tonight when you're eating dinner, just know that you can go to the website and you can ask questions. We really want this to be a two-way conversation and really want this to really want you all to understand the impact of all of this and definitely get those questions out. That being said, I want to say that tonight we are really focusing on rates. And so if we get questions that are outside of those rates, we may direct you to somebody else. We may direct you to me to ask later or to an email address. So I just want to mention that if it kind of gets off topic. That being said, please feel free to raise your hand like this. Zoom has the little feature that will raise it, or you can go ahead and select, where did it go? Reaction, and go ahead and do a raise hand, and then we will select you or call on you to unmute yourself, or John will unmute for us. So if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to raise your hand. We also, actually, we will start with one in the chat. And Jeremy, I am sending it to you. I'm going to read it out loud. It says, when you mention like a percentage rate increase, does that mean that the percentage for the entire GCSD bill, or is that just the percentage on the usage and the fixed portion of the bill stays the same?
Question. So when we refer to that, the percentage rate adjustments, that is actually a percentage in terms of the overall net revenue requirement required by the utility itself. And so in the first year of the study, there is a cost of service adjustment, either by customer class or on the water side by the meter sizes. And so you're not going to see an equal adjustment in terms of all of the different categories there. For instance, on the water side, you're seeing only about a $6 increase on the fixed charges, which is less than the total net revenue requirement because there is going to be a larger revenue collection in terms of the variable charge adjustment. And so that first year, there are uneven adjustments in terms of the rates to be in line with the cost of service. Whereas in years 2 through 5, then those adjustments will be across the board and then match the percentages that are shown on the financial plan.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for answering that question.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I'm just gonna, just in case that we speak in a little bit different terms coming out of the office sometimes. Instead of revenue requirements, that's exactly correct, Jeremy. You got it right on. For the average customer that uses the 3,300 gallons in a month, it's going to be right around the a 35% increase in the rate in the first year. And it might be a good time to state that we've got a calculator that's, I don't know if it's already on the website, but will be, Michelle, and so that people can plug in their usage and know exactly what they're faced with.
Yes, thank you, Pete. Yes, that is definitely going to be on the website so that you all can really go in and double check to see what it would exactly look like from your bill.
Michelle, this is Nancy. I think Mike Gustafson had his hand up at the beginning. Did you, Mike, have a question?
Thank you, Nancy.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
We can. Thanks,
Okay,
Mike.
thank you. My name is Mike Gustafson, and president of the board of directors of Pine Mountain Lake. First off, I want to thank GCSD for providing this opportunity for us to all see how the Chinese food is made in the kitchen. I do have a question about the CIP. It says that in both cases, there was some significant percentage of the CIP that was not funded. That anytime I hear something that says something isn't funded, my hairs go up. So could someone explain how that's going to get funded if it's, it seems like it ought to be unfunded. And then if you could put that link back up on the display. I got it all the way up to .com, but I didn't get the rest of it. And I'm sure other people weren't able to write any faster than I was. So I got my answer. There was 20 people on the call, which is somewhat disappointing. I wish there would have been 200 people on the call because clearly this is going to affect everybody. And as so often happens, oh, there it is, / Groveland. Okay, got that. Thank you. So often happens in these kinds of situations, people will come when you get ready to actually to do this, they'll say, well, how did this happen? Why wasn't I informed? And it's always disappointing when people don't pay attention. But it is true, 70% of the people up here do not live on the hill, and probably this is not high on their list. I really appreciated the comparison to other districts. I think that really kind of shined a light on that GCSD is not money mongering. They are doing the best they can. It's always been true, in my opinion. They're doing the best they can. It's always in mathematics we call it. It's always a divisor problem, and that's what this is. It's a divisor problem. Let's see. I had some questions on the protest. Not that I'm suggesting that should happen, but is that something that is homeowner driven, or is that a process that the GCSD is going to be involved with as far as instigating? I assume not. I assume it's a homeowner driven process, but if I'm wrong about that. And lastly, the PML has their board of directors meetings, and I assume it's okay if during my moment of discussion where we're given freelance that I will probably put up or at least talk about this schedule so that everybody, well, we have the same problem. We get 8 people that attend the on Zoom and another 25 in the room. So for those people, they'll actually get, maybe they can tell all their friends. I'll put up what this study was and what the process is going to be if that's okay, which I assume it is. So anyway, again, thank you for doing this. I do appreciate it.
Michelle, do you want to start out? I'm really excited about
Yeah.
some of them.
Yes. And so, Mike, I just want to say that this is just the start of this engagement. And so I am going to, just because we have some time, I'm excited. I'm going to share my screen. So this is the website. And if you noticed, this is where we have the Zoom link for today. We have some information, and so this is going to continue to be updated. We have the community meeting announcement. And we have an in-person workshop on May 15th. So this is our virtual, which is going to be recorded. We exactly what you said, we want people to share it out. And if, as people are starting to talk about this, they want to talk to us in person, we have this opportunity. It's going to be a really informal drop-in event. And so, sorry. And so we really want you to be able to come in, talk to the district staff, talk to Jeremy, talk to me, kind of on a one-on-one basis. And so that we can really break things down if you're still not understanding. We really want to be transparent and open about this and really talk to you about how it's really going to impact you. We also have the public hearing on June 18th. And we have the website where you can sign up. Oop, there's the community map. You can subscribe for updates. And as everything happens, we can really let you know. So when the calculator pops on the website, you'll be alerted. When we are about close to the meeting, you'll be alerted. So you will continue to get these updates. And so we really, really highly recommend that you sign up. You can also, if you are a fan of Facebook and have that, there's also a Facebook page that you can follow, and we can get your information through that. So that's my portion of that website, and then Pete, I'm going to let you take the rest.
Okay, am I still up and running?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. Like those are great questions, and one thing that we will have posted on the website is a comprehensive Q&A. Basically, your questions as they come up, we expect those to pop up daily throughout this process, and so we appreciate that input, and we will answer the questions to the best we can now. And then as we go along and as we see questions come up either into the office, online, on social media, we'll keep that updated because we think that's a good way for people to learn what's going on. You asked a good question right out of the chute. What's not getting done? what we did is we noodled this capital improvement plan because when you start looking at a $68 million water system CIP over a 10-year period, you know you've got problems, you know you need to spread it out, you need to prioritize and do some upfront thinking on things. The thing that the percentage that's not getting done is full amount of the reserves over a 10-year period. For example, replacement of the asbestos cement mains and the lateral lines that go from the main to the property line, both water and sewer. We will, as Jeremy laid out in the financial plan, will be accumulating some money in our infrastructure reserve toward those. But that is not in our initial loan that we would be getting on the water or sewer side. What we're doing is we're setting that aside, knowing that we need to fund that. We need to put money into that reserve account. And over the period of the rate adjustments, we will be putting every drop of money we can into that. And you'll be able to track that eventually on our, on our website too. We'll create links wherever we can, but we're trying to be able to show, in reality, it's after the rates are in effect that will start to accumulate. But we want everybody to be able to see that money come in and then go out toward either the projects, the operations, or the reserves. So the underground mains, which are, they're really expensive to replace those. It's not that we're letting them fail. It's just that we're putting money into reserves on those instead of replacing them up front. They're not failing, Mike. Like in many cases, those mains are still in relatively good shape. That doesn't mean we don't count on future problems, but we can actually, set up the reserves and then take that on in the future. Develop reserves toward replacement of undersized and aging pipelines. We've got some 4-inch and 6-inch water mains that were installed. They're not mission critical in that the system operates. You can still turn on the faucet at the hotel downtown or the restaurant downtown, and you've got plenty of water. The dilemma comes when you operate a fire hydrant at the same time that the hotel's full, at the same time that you've got PML occupied all the way. There are some bottlenecks in the system. And one of our priority projects that we are funding right off the bat is a hydraulic model in both the water and sewer system to identify where those problems are, which ones are the worst, and which ones are the best to take care of right away. So we still have some advanced planning to do there in the hydraulic modeling. And that would be, again, they built the system. They didn't expect to have fire flow demand the way that we think about fire flow demand currently. We want to make sure that when those fire hydrants turn on, that they've got adequate water. Develop reserves toward pressure regulating stations, control valves, water pump stations, wastewater pump stations. In our immediate plan and in our funding, we've identified the ones that need to be upgraded right away, and those will be included in a loan in, I think, year 3 of the rate progress. So we'll take on those loans that we talked about. We'll get those projects done before that 5-year period and address the most critical. But then, like the cash flow showed, we'll still be building a reserve at the end of this to be able to put money away toward those things. Right now, the pressure regulating stations, we had them completely rebuilt. They seem to be in pretty good condition. They usually fail before they have, but we're thinking about that because when they fail, they put too much pressure on the system and they start to break water mains. So we got to be really careful with that. Same with control valves. And as you know, lift stations are always a big maintenance headache, and so we want to make sure we're putting away reserves for those. Again, if we would be putting away much more reserves if we were going to be able to, if we said, hey, we have to fund this in this 10-year period. But what we're doing is we're just deferring it out. We're putting as much as we can away, and and addressing major things as they come up. Things like building maintenance, like a roofing, siding, painting, those kind of things, those all come out of the equipment replacement reserve as needed. again, we'll be making the roof that we should replace in 20 years, last 25, things like that. Some things like water leak detections and studies that we had planned, were going to be deferred in that 80% that in water that's not getting done. But we'll probably move those into a higher position if our hydraulic model tells us we need to. So we still have some study to do there. There's some areas that the hydraulic model we expect is going to show us we need some redundancy, some another pipeline connecting an area so that if a section goes down, we don't have to lose water to a whole area. For example, if we have a fire, we're operating a fire hydrant, the system breaks down. We may want to be able to have a redundant pipeline so that certain areas can, we can still fill tanks and things. So those is an engineering thing. And again, we're putting money towards it, but we're not fixing it in the short term. There's some efficiencies and other things that we need to look at that are really important. For example, when we first built the water treatment plants at Second Road and Big Creek, those were done to try to avoid filtering the water and use the Hetch Hetchy water without filtering it. Assuming that was the filters were going to be really expensive to operate. Unfortunately, we found over time that the level of chemicals, the level of power, the redundant stuff we have to have, the certification, employee certification levels are more complicated. The water quality deteriorates faster. And we need to do some pilot studies to determine if adding filtration gives us as good or better water quality and makes our water last longer in the tank without having to waste it and keeps our water quality up. So that is something we may move into a priority position just because it'll save money. One thing that's on the horizon that I'm not sure exactly how we're going to deal with is the replacement of our wastewater treatment plant. We have two local systems, one in Tuolumne Utilities District, the second in Jamestown. TUD's treatment plant upgrades, the state showed up, said we're going to update your permit. And when they came back with their new permit, they had to basically completely replace their wastewater plant, which was a rock solid in my opinion, but the state mandates what you do. Their project was $45 million to replace that treatment plant. Jamestown replaced theirs. It was originally budgeted at $7.5 million. It came in at $17 million for their little treatment plant. And we have a treatment plant here that we expect will probably be in the $20 million range. We have a 1984 wastewater discharge permit. That's unheard of. The state has just not been in here to update the permit, but when you get calls to the state about odor and different things, the state starts to smell around and they come in and they say, your permit's really old. We're going to have to update that permit. And when they do, they don't address the odor. All they do is they make you upgrade your treatment plant. And in our case, that would be, again, probably a $20 million thing. So that is part of that equation that's not getting funded. But again, we're putting as much money as we possibly can into a reserve that will help us do advanced engineering, maybe apply for as many grants as we can find that might be available. And, we'll watch the money market there to do that, because we know it's going to happen. We just got to be prepared for it. In all reality, Mike, that's going to be a big enough project where we're going to go out to the voters probably and say, how do you want to fund this thing and all that? But we need to have some money going toward preliminary engineering. The second thing that you asked about was the majority protest component. Basically, it's identified in the law as a process that if an affected property owner is opposed to the rates, they can,
Pete, do you want Jeremy to answer that question?
yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it. That'll
let's have Jeremy answer.
No, Pete was doing great. Yeah, there's
I know
very
you're doing great.
specific legal requirements in terms of the notice. So all affected property owners will receive a notice in the mail outlining the protest procedure. And so it is one protest per parcel or owner. And so the threshold for the board not to be able to implement the rates would be 50% plus one in terms of the majority protest. But yes, it's very much spelled out in terms of those legal requirements. So the district will follow all of those procedures. You were doing a great job with
You
it.
are
So
doing a great
that's
job.
That was and for me, it answered the question, and you give me a break. There.
All right. So I do know Patricia Epp wants to speak as well. And so Patricia, would you like to go off mute? Or John, there you go. Oh, Patricia, we still can't hear you.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you to the district for all of this opportunity to learn and really become involved in this process. I had some email communication with district staff today. Don't ask me why, but the Yosemite Chamber of Commerce, I probably received, it's not a lot, but to me, it was indicative of something I wanted to bring to your attention, phone calls with people saying, I don't understand how to be a part of this tonight. And, you know, while I'm probably not the most social media savvy person in the world, I am extremely social media savvy because I ran my own business that used social media. But the first Facebook post was a link will be posted to allow you to be a part of this meeting. And then the second time the post came out, it was register in order to be a part. And I found the people that were calling, and I referred all of them to GCSD because it's not my show, obviously. So it's nothing I want to get involved in. But people were confused as to how do I listen? How do I be a part of this? How do I, and so the communication, and you're a professional company and you've done this a million times, and I'm sure you have your protocol, but it just seemed to be confusing to a lot of folks as to how do I do this? So maybe that speaks to why there isn't a large turnout tonight. I have no idea, but it's like now there's a different website that I have to go to, and it was just, so I would say to each person, call GCSD, and I kept the number. Here's the number, give them a call and they'll explain it to you. So I just wanted to share that with you, that I don't know if it's because of the median age of our folks here in I'm speaking from Pine Mountain Lake because that's where the calls came from, or what, but people were confused. So
No,
that's it.
I really appreciate that feedback, Patricia. And just so you know, we are definitely sending out postcards for the in-person. And so there is definitely going to be more community engagement. This is really just the start of it. Like
Right.
this is also going
No,
to be.
I get that. Yeah, I get that. It's just that, I was sensing frustration on people's parts. They knew something was coming up. They knew there was going to be an opportunity to hear, but they didn't know how they were going to get to it.
Gorgeous. All right.
So
No,
that's it.
I again appreciate
Okay.
that feedback,
No
Patricia.
problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And so then I do have one more question here. It said, somebody was requesting if the total bill would be increased or the water usage only.
So the rate adjustments will impact both the fixed charges as well as the variable volumetric charges on the water side. And as you alluded to, Michelle, there will be that bill calculator available on the website. So you'll be able to see specifically how that will impact you based on your average usage, or if you have your monthly usage on the bill, you'll be able to put that in, and then the bill calculator will show you how that impacts based on the proposed rate structure.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeremy. All right.
We just wanted to say also that customers, they're more than welcome to call into the office. And we can help them when the calculator does go up, just to assist them with, to look back at different bills, their summer usage, or things they may not have access to give them some different scenarios of what that would look like. So district staff is, more than happy to assist customers with, facilitating that and maneuvering through the calculator tool.
I love that. Thank you. And another reminder that May 15th is another one of those opportunities where Jeremy will be there, and you can talk to him and he can help you through the calculator and kind of even walk you through your rate specifically. So that's going to be a really great one-on-one opportunity for you to really see the impact.
Are we gonna have people bring their bill there?
Yes, that would be
Jeremy,
really,
go ahead,
yep,
Crystal.
that would be wonderful. Yeah. Great.
Rachel made a good point that we'll also have our laptop there and can access customer data and do it real time.
Beautiful. Yes. All right. Well, I am not seeing any more hands up. I just want to appreciate everybody's time. I want to again mention that everything here will be on civicmike.com/Groveland. And that if you have any questions, that please feel free to go to that website or use Facebook. Or email us. There are a lot of ways for you to get involved and to talk. Please feel free to call the district office. We really want this to be a personal experience where you can really find out the impact of this rate study on you all. So that being said, I really appreciate everybody's time today, and we are going to sign off. You all have a great night.